This is more Doug DeMuro, and today is a big day. It is the end of the year, and I am going to go over my top 15 quirks and features of 2020, the craziest 15 quirks and features of all the cars I reviewed in the last year. I've done this video for the last few years. It is always a big hit. Let's get started. Before I get started, a quick reminder to check out Cars and Bids, which is my new online car auction website for modern enthusiast cars. If you have a cool car to sell from the 1980s and up, sell it with Cars and Bids, the ultimate place to sell your cool cars from the modern era. And if you're looking to buy a cool modern enthusiast car, you will find the best variety and daily auctions on Cars and Bids. Go to carsandbids.com. Now, one other announcement before I get started with the top 15 quirks and features. Right now on my main channel, there is a video live where I am giving out this year's Doug Awards. The awards to the best car, the worst car, there are several different awards. That is sort of my real end of the year wrap up video. You can check that out by clicking the link in the description below. But for now, on more Doug, let's go over the top 15 quirks and features of 2020. All right, now, like in previous years, I have ranked these. So the order I'm going to go in, I'm going to start with top quirk number 15, and then I'm going to get down to number 1, the quirkiest quirk of the year. So let's get started with the number 15 top quirk of 2020. That would be the Ford F-150's folding shifter. This was a bizarre feature where you could press a button in the F-150 and the gear shift would fold down flat into the center console so that you could then extend out the center console lid to turn it into a table. Now, not only is a folding gear shifter a strange idea, but a table in the center console is also, although it could be useful if you're using your F-150 for work purposes, you need a right, that could be a nice feature, but it's still odd to see. Probably the strangest part is the fact that most Ford models use a little dial to go into gear, and if Ford had just used that in the F-150, they wouldn't have needed a folding down shifter because the dial is so flat, but they didn't do that, and so we have a folding shifter, which is one of the top quirks of the year. Next up, number 14 quirk of 2020, yes, the Porsche Carrera GT hidden storage compartments and the fitted luggage. So the Carrera GT has some storage throughout the car, like most cars do, front trunk, like a lot of Porsches, but it also has hidden storage compartments in its doors. You can pop open this little panel and put stuff in the doors, which is weird. There's even storage compartments in the engine bay, which is really weird. You can store stuff in there. It comes with, I think, a toolkit and a safety triangle in there, but you can take that stuff out and put other storage in the engine bay if you want. And then there's fitted luggage that goes into some of these places, including there's fitted luggage for the weird little pockets in the doors, and there's even a piece of fitted luggage for underneath the center console. There's a little hole there and a piece of luggage perfectly designed to match the size and shape of that hole, and you can sort of secure it using this little clip on the bottom that clips into the car, and that's your fitted luggage and your weird storage compartments in the Carrera GT. It's so strange, a supercar like that going to such lengths to make it just a little bit more practical. Next up, number 13 strangest quirk of 2020, that would be the C8 Corvette line of buttons. There is an entire line going down the center control stack in the C8 Corvette that just has button, 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 button. Many of them. Climate controls are primarily here, some other stuff. It is a lot of buttons, and it's a little bit confusing at first to see how it all operates, but you do eventually get used to it. Still, it's strange. So many buttons in one place, all in a line. One of the stranger center control stack treatments I saw this year. Next up, top 15 quirks of the year, number 12, the Genesis/Hyundai Sonata feature where you can walk the car using the key. Now, I had previously shown you this a couple years ago on the top-end BMW 7 Series, but in 2020, this technology trickled down to cheaper cars, Hyundai's and Genesis models. Basically, you can press a button on the key fob of these vehicles, and then you can walk next to them while the car moves like you're walking a pet. you stand there holding the button, and then the car moves next to you, and you can move it forward or backwards this way. The theory here is you can use this to get out of a tight parking spot. If you're stuck, you can't get in on the side because the door won't open far enough, here's your way to move it via remote, which is a crazy feature. I'm not sure how many people will actually use this, but it is certainly a quirky quirk. Next up, number 11 quirkiest quirk of the year. That would be the Ford Mustang Mach-E door handles. I recently showed you this, a very bizarre operation. To get into a Mach-E, you just push a little button on the outside, then the door pops open and you can't close it right away because there's like a little kickstand that prevents the door from closing and trapping your fingers and pinching them in the door. Instead, you have to open the door further, the kickstand goes away, and then you can close it. The whole operation is really strange in front, where you have a little handle that you can use to pull the door open, but it's especially strange in back, where you just have the button, and then the door pops open and you're intended to stick your hand inside the door opening. There's a little rubber surface and you can open the door the rest of the way. Very strange, a total rethink of door handle design. A lot of cars have been doing some strange, weird, interesting things with their door handles recently, but the Mustang Mach-E has definitely one-upped everyone else with door handle strangeness. Okay, now we're in the top 10. Number 10 weirdest quirk of 2020. Chevy HHR SS rear hatch release from the inside. This car is quirky to begin with. Some weird stuff in here, but this is bizarre. If you look on the inside of the rear hatch of the Chevy HHR SS, you have these weird little plastic ovals, like intended to make it not look like a cheap, crappy piece of plastic. There's a little definition to make it look a little nicer. Well, one of these little ovals is a dummy. It's fake. You can pull it out and then you can reach into the space where it was, and that's your emergency rear hatch release from the back. So you have these little trim ovals on the inside plastic of the rear tailgate, but one of them is fake and can be removed. This is one of the stranger things I've ever seen. First off, why is there even an inside tailgate release? Vehicles with cargo areas like this don't need that by law. And second, why did they integrate it in this way? And it's not even like the furthest one on the left or the right. It's like the third one in. You have to really know. So even if you were being kidnapped at an HHR, you never know you could get out that way. The whole thing is comically weird. Very General Motors in the late 2000s, the bankruptcy era, they were doing some weird stuff. The HHR SS panel van is weird. This is the weirdest part. Next up, number 9 quirkiest quirk of 2020, the Bugatti Divo brake lights are really interesting, and frankly, I think they're really cool. I especially like what happens when you walk up to the car and unlock it. You can see all of the little lights sort of light up one by one, these strange squares and rectangles of light in the back. When you lock it, same deal, they sort of go away one by one. Again, rectangles in back, they all just kind of turn off. But even when you have on the brake lights or the turn signals, it all just looks really cool back here. It is probably the coolest brake light design I've seen in any modern car, definitely in the top 3 or 4, and it very much belongs on a car at this price point because everything should be cool when you're paying $6, $7, $8 million for a car. Okay, next up, number 8 quirkiest quirk of 2020, that would be the Oldsmobile Silhouette built-in rear child seat. This is an excellent feature. This is a minivan, and built into the second row of seats was a child seat. So you didn't have to go buy your own child seat if you had one of these. It was in the seat already. It's such a great thought. I guess automakers got rid of this because they were concerned about liability and other reasons, but the Oldsmobile Silhouette still had it. I reviewed a Silhouette this year. And it was just so interesting to see it there, a little built-in child seat. Some cars have built-in booster seats, but it's not really the same. A built-in child seat for, more protection for an infant or a toddler, that is a really cool touch. It's a neat idea, and it was neat to see that level of innovation. I think that was like an early 90s model, even back then. That was a cool quirk. Next up, number 7 quirkiest quirk of the year, Toyota Venza Magic Sky Roof. This was a feature in the Toyota Venza. It had this giant glass sunroof like so many new cars do, but the cool thing here was you could push a button and instantly darken it. You could tint it like instantly. And then you could push a button again and then it was light again and all the sunlight was coming through. But if it was a really sunny day, very bright, very hot, you push the button, darken it, and then you don't get any sunlight and you're not as hot anymore. This is a really cool feature. Now, I have mentioned this feature before in other vehicles. McLarens have had it, so it's not like it's new. The new part is it's on a Toyota Toyota crossover that costs like 40 grand. So this crazy, bizarre feature, which I think is really cool, is making its way into like the mainstream car world. And to see it on a Toyota Venza, that's neat. And I hope all sunroofs in the next 5-10 years begin to adopt this feature, because it really does change. You can have a glass roof look out into the world, or you can have like a closed roof without the annoyance of one of those whir things, little top covers. This is a way cooler solution, and I loved seeing that in the Venza. And by the way, I don't know if they actually call it the Magic Sky roof. I don't remember what they call it, but that's what I'm calling it. Okay, next up, number 6 quirkiest quirk of 2020, the Mercedes S-Class W140 rear parking sensors. In the days before actual parking sensors, the S-Class from this era had little sticks that would come up out of the trunk when you shifted into reverse, so you had a really good idea of where the rear of your car was. And you could look in the mirror or look behind you and see these little sticks that had come up so you knew how far back you were. This was before radar, sonar-based parking sensors. And instead they had sticks that came up out of the trunk so you could tell where you were and make sure you wouldn't hit anything. You could tell the very corner of your car. Now, later in the production of this vehicle, those sticks went away and it was replaced by parking sensors like we know them today. And it was one of the first cars to have parking sensors like that. But in the days before that, they had sticks coming out of the trunk. Okay, and now we are down to the top 5 quirkiest quirks of 2020. There are a lot of quirks this year. Rounding it down to 5 is pretty hard, but here they are. Number 5, the screen in the Buick Riata. This was an amazing thing to play around with. The Riata from the 80s has a touch screen, and it operates in a very 80s manner, but it does operate. And I was able to show touching it, it would respond, it would eject a tape, all the stuff you could do with this old school touchscreen. This had to be one of the very first touchscreens in a modern vehicle. Now, the Riata that I reviewed was like an 88 model, I think, 89. And the early ones had all this tech, these screens. Later, they found out that Buick customers were kind of overwhelmed by the technology and they ditched that stuff and made it more normal. So I really wanted to find an early Riata with the screens, with working screens, which is hard, and I did. And it was amazing to see it and see how it operated and see it real. The Buick Riata, one of the oldest, craziest touchscreens. It was a very, very interesting experience to see the touchscreen basically before the touchscreen as we know it. Next up, number 4 quirkiest quirk of 2020 is in the Polestar 1, and that would be the trunk with its exposed wires. I thought this was insane. So like a Lamborghini has an exposed engine cover so you can look in and see the big V12. Well, the Polestar 1 in the trunk has a little window so you can look in and see wires. And then you know that it's an electric car. So instead of like flexing with your engine, like in a Lambo or a Ferrari, this thing, you open your trunk and you can be like, yep, electric. You see this? That's right. This was one of the strangest things I have ever seen in a vehicle. The trunk of the Polestar 1 gives you a window into the inner workings of the EV system by showing all the wires. Totally bizarre, but cool to see. Next up, down to the final 3. Number 3, quirkiest quirk of 2000. Back to the Oldsmobile Silhouette, the sliding door sound. The Silhouette was the first vehicle, first minivan to have a power sliding door. And Oldsmobile, General Motors, they were so worried about kids getting caught in there, hands getting stuck, limbs being chopped off, that they actually provided a sound that would sound every time the door was opening or closing. Take a listen. And so every time the door would close or open, that sound would go off and you would know, oh, stay clear, the door is closing, like at the airport when they play a sound with the little train. And I can't believe it. And it's just crazy to hear it now. And I'm again so thrilled that the Silhouette I was driving, it actually had this sound, still operant, still working. You could hear it, that little song. Of course, now all minivans have power sliding doors. It's not considered unusual. No sounds are played. But back then, they really had no clue how this would be received. They were nervous that kids would get their hands stuck, and they thought a little piece of music, not too obtrusive, but something would make sure that kids kept away. They could hear the sound and know, okay, the door is closing. things stay back. Okay, down to the final two quirks. Top quirks of 2020. Number 2, the Honda S2000 from the Fast and the Furious. Its bathroom carpet interior. Now, this isn't really all that fair because it's not like this was a stock item, but this car is a very famous car. It was in the Fast and the Furious movie, the second one, and the interior is shown to be this shaggy pink, and it looks cool. Well, it turns out to actually be bathroom carpeting that has aged terribly over the last 20 years since the movie came out, and it's absurd. And it was cool to see it. But it's amazing to me how movie productions cut corners or just don't care because, you know, they only need to spend money where stuff's going to be shown on camera. And so in this case, the bathroom carpeting, there was never going to be a close-up so you'd see that it was bathroom carpeting. They just didn't need to make it nice. And only 20 years later, when I did this Quirks and Features tour, did we discover it was actually just ugly, matted bathroom carpeting. I can't believe there's bathroom rugs inside this famous S2000. That was a crazy quirk. And finally, undoubtedly, this was clear to me from the moment I saw it this year, the number 1 quirk of 2020, the shoes that came with the Ferrari F50. So when you got an F50 new back in 1995, they got your shoe size and you got F50 shoes to go along with your car. Now, these days when an F50 trades hands, having the shoes is kind of a big deal because it signifies this F50 has been kept together, it is complete. They were all delivered with the shoes, but not all of them still retain the shoes. But the F50 that I filmed still had the shoes. And I have always wondered what they looked like, how they were packaged, how big, what was the design? And I finally got to actually see the Ferrari F50 shoes. So now we know what the shoes looked like that accompanied the F50. This is one of the stranger things that has ever kind of gone along. This is like a $600,000 car back then. And the perk was, oh, you got driving shoes. And so it was neat to see them. It was neat to be able to video them. And that is the quirkiest quirk of the year. The shoes that went along with the Ferrari F50. So many of these are lost to time. They probably pop up on eBay here and there for thousands of dollars because F50 owners want to add them to their car to make their cars complete. But here's an actual set of the F50 shoes. Amazing. But anyway, that's it. Those are my top 15 quirks of quirky 2020. And don't forget to go over to my main channel and check out the Doug Awards, 2nd year in a row, where I am going through like 6 or 7 or 8 awards of the best, the worst, the most interesting, whatever, all the cars that I filmed this year. Link to the Doug Awards is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching my channel in 2020, and I can't wait to get started on 2021. And now that DOUGSCORE has ended, all the supercars, all the crazy stuff, get ready for a very quirky January.